Hello and welcome back to the Intuitive Health Studio podcast. My name is Kelsey. I am a clinical naturopath and nutritionist, and in today's episode we are going to be chatting about the menstrual cycle and menstrual cycle tracking. So this might not sound like a super interesting topic, but it is very, very integral to do as a menstruating woman to be able to understand your hormones and what may be out of balance or regulation. So menstrual cycle tracking, I want to start from the beginning of why this is important. So when we're trying to understand your symptoms, if you're experiencing breast tenderness, acne, if you're experiencing cramping, if you're experiencing pain throughout your cycle, what we need to understand is what your hormones are doing. So through your cycle, your hormones are shifting and changing, right? So we want to understand how they're shifting and changing. If there are certain parts of the cycle that your hormones are a little bit dysregulated, we want to understand why that's happening as well. This correlates to your diet, your lifestyle, your gut microbiome, your everything in between, your sleep, your stress, your everything. But if we can get a kind of a lay of the land of what your cycle is doing, then we are able to go back and look at the data and really recognize the patterns. It's all about seeing the patterns and discovering what is causing those patterns, what the drivers are. So you can do menstrual cycle tracking in another number of ways. I know some of my clients just write it in their notes, some write it in calendars, some write it pen and paper, some use apps. I say a lot of the time it's apps, whether it's Clue or Flow, Natural Cycles, Stardust, whatever it may be. Apps are really handy because they already have the symptoms in there. So you can just click and put in whatever symptom you are having. So I just want to preface or start off just chatting about what the menstrual cycle is and specific symptoms you should look out for in your menstrual cycle, because you might not actually be aware that some of these symptoms that you're actually experiencing is actually connected to your hormones. So starting off with when to actually track your menstrual cycle. So what I mean by menstrual cycle is, when I say menstrual cycle, I mean from day one of the bleed to the next day one of your bleed. So that chunk of time, whatever it looks like, normal, like in research, in textbooks, it's the 28 days. But I know that is definitely not the case for everyone. But it's that day one of the bleed to the next cycle. So what we want to do is the day one of their bleed is day one of your cycle. So putting this down in your calendar or whatever app or mechanism you are using to track, putting down the day one of your bleed. And what this does is it kind of resets your cycle, because we want to track at least 3 cycles to identify a pattern. Now, if you're coming off the pill, or if you are on any hormonal contraceptive pills or medication, it's not really relevant for you just yet. But if you have decided you want to come off the pill, this is really good information to know. Just be mindful that I will do another episode on this, but coming off the pill, depending on what has happened previously, your hormones might be a little bit out of whack, but we'll go through that in a different episode. So, day one of your bleed, we want to track. Day one of your bleed, we want to track throughout the bleed of your cycle. So every single day of your cycle, we're tracking that. We're also tracking the heaviness. Now, why this is important is because as a practitioner, as a naturopath, I want to identify if you're losing too much blood. If you're losing too much blood, that can contribute to energy levels depletion, nutrient level depletion. It's just not a very fun time. So we want to make sure that you're not losing too much blood. Now, a simple way that you can do this is through just even noting, you can note this down, but how many pads and tampons you're actually going through. If you're using a cup, or if you're using period undies, if you're experiencing any flooding or leaking, that's another important thing to note. And then we want to identify, okay, what kind of symptoms are you having? Are you having changes in mood? Is your digestion all out of whack? Do you feel super lethargic? Do you get really bad cramping? Really bad migraines? Like, these symptoms are super important to note down, because it will give us an idea of what is happening with your hormones. So, day 1 of your bleed, tracking every single day of your bleed until it's finished. Even tracking that brownish blood that you may experience at the end of your bleed, because when you come to a practitioner like myself, that's important to know, because it gives me an idea of what your hormones are doing, how it's actually going from one phase to another. So from this, we enter the follicular phase. This is when we are starting the whole cycle again, meaning your brain is talking to your ovaries, trying to find the perfect egg to release, and then we go into ovulation. Ovulation is another part of the cycle where I commonly see clients experience different symptoms. So things to note here is, in ovulation, this is the peak of our hormones, of our estrogen, our luteinizing hormone, our follicular stimulating hormone, our testosterone, our prolactin. So this peak, what should happen, air quotation marks, is you should have a boost of energy. You should have high libido. You should be feeling really good within yourself. Now, I know this isn't the case for everyone. So if you don't experience these things, if you experience ovulation pain, if you don't have any mood changes, if you don't feel like that increased energy or increased libido, if you feel quite the same through this section of the period, then note that down, because that is super, super, super relevant and super important for myself as a practitioner to know. When we are going post-ovulation, so ovulation is around the midpoint of the cycle. Obviously, this is different for everyone. After the ovulation, we go into our luteal phase. Now, our luteal phase is where a lot of the symptoms happen, if they were going to happen. This is where the majority of my clients come to see me for, because they are experiencing pretty much 2 weeks of feeling like not themselves. They feel like a completely different person. And I understand why, because post-ovulation, you have this shift in hormones. You have this shift where your estrogen is dropping, your progesterone should be rising, and you're entering this new phase. So what can happen because of this shift in hormones, if we're not creating enough progesterone, if we're creating too much estrogen, if we're not creating enough hormones overall, then we can experience a lot of symptoms. These symptoms can include breast tenderness, cramping, changes in mood, feeling like our mood's like a roller coaster, feeling really agitated, angry, irritable, maybe if we're on the verge of tears. We can get cramping, we can get fatigue, we can get migraines, we can get headaches, we can get bloating, we can get constipation, we can get diarrhea. Our energies are going to be lower. We can get really bad sugar cravings. Does all of this resonate with you? If it does, I hear you. I hear you. So this point of the cycle is really important to note down these symptoms. You might experience insomnia. That's another one that can happen. Why this happens is because this shift in hormones. Really being specific on what is occurring, because if you're experiencing anxiety over irritability, that tells me there's different hormones at play. If you're experiencing migraines over cramping, again, different hormones at play, different detoxification pathways at play, different parts of the body that we need to understand and depict and really support. So as you can see, throughout the whole menstrual cycle, your body is supposed to feel different in each stage. It's not supposed to feel the same throughout. If you are feeling the same throughout the whole cycle, then I want you to note that down as well, because you're supposed to have these hormone shifts. These hormone shifts is what gives us energy at different points of the cycle, gives us libido, it gives us this sense of self. It sounds strange, but we are supposed to feel things through the cycle. But if they are at an extreme amount or significant amount, you're not supposed to be experiencing pain. You're not supposed to be experiencing this roller coaster of emotions. It's a tame version of entering different shifts of your hormones. If you're not experiencing a tame version, then we need to look at it deeper. Now, this is important as well to identify, particularly when you're tracking your menstrual cycle, is what day it starts and what day it ends. And if you do this 3 cycles in a row at least, this will give us an average of how long your cycle is. And this is particularly important for predicting ovulation. It's also good for hormone testing. It's also just good to see if there's patterns, like I mentioned. 3 cycles in a row, you were getting migraines at this particular point of the cycle, or 3 cycles in a row, you're getting this significant drop in mood at day, 17 of the cycle. That gives me as a practitioner, I guess, a visual of what your hormones are doing. So it's not about being super accurate. I mean, like, you don't have to go super in detail, but gauging what happens will be a substantial support in me supporting you. And it's really fascinating as well, just to see how the body changes and how the body is different for everyone. Another thing to note as well, when I was talking about cycle to cycle, if you're one of those, if you experience cycles and they are really irregular, it is so much more important for you as well to track your cycle, because that gives me an indication, again, what your hormones are doing. If it's super long 1 month, if it's super short 1 month, then I'll be able to identify, okay, what happened this month? What hormones are at play? And then we can support you and treat and support you appropriately. So this is super interesting. In other episodes, I'm going to go into a little bit more detail on the different phases of the cycle, just so you have an understanding of what goes on and what you might be experiencing, but also nutrients that will support those different phases as well. I find this super interesting as a person, as a naturopath, but as a woman, a menstruating woman as well. Like, this is super fascinating to me, and I really love supporting my clients in help educate them and empower them about their menstrual cycle, but also supporting them to feel better. Because a lot of my clients come to see me, and 2 weeks of every single month, they don't feel like themselves. They're having like this out of body experience because they just don't feel like themselves, and they don't feel like they have any control. That to me is huge, because 2 weeks out of every single month, that's nearly half of the year. You don't feel like yourself. You don't feel good within yourself. And I don't think that's okay. And I think we need to help you the best that we can. And that is what I'm here for. I am here to support you. I'm here to help you navigate this. Hormones take time to regulate themselves, take time to really support. They take time to regulate themselves. So it's not about a quick fix. Like, we do the work, we do the testing, we do the diet changes, we do the lifestyle changes, we integrate herbs. Like, it's a process, but we want that longevity. We want you to be supported through the whole lifespan of your menstruating years. So I deliver consultations, or I provide consultations online and in person. So you can jump onto my website, intuitivehealthstudio.com, and make sure that you follow me on Instagram. So I'm at Intuitive Health Studio. I'd love to see you over there. Thank you so much for listening to this podcast episode, and I hope to see you in the next one. Bye.